That, my friends, is the new Silent Hill F trailer, and I couldn't be more excited. It's finally here. We now have a release date set for September 25th, 2025, and it's ready for pre-order. And in addition to this announcement, we were given about 3 minutes, or 2 minutes and 50 seconds if you're counting, of brand new gameplay footage, which showcased a lot of new features of the game. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to go over some of the highlights of the trailer, and also address some things that concern me a little bit, and maybe you as well. So let's talk about it. So my overall impression of the trailer is very good. I am super happy with how the game looks, and also very happy with the direction of the story. It looks like there's going to be a lot of interpersonal relationship conflicts, and this will be the core of the struggle that Hinako goes through. And I'm really excited to see how this unfolds. So let's start from the beginning of the trailer. We first see Hinako have a lovely chat with her best friend Sakuko, who's a new character that's introduced to us just now. And pay attention to her hairstyle. We're going to get back to that in a minute. The conversation starts off somewhat normal. Hinako says, Sakuko responds. Hinako replies. Sakuko retorts. Hinako acknowledges and says, until a voice suddenly interrupts this conversation. The tone of the scene becomes even more ominous as Sakuko chuckles and leaves the scene. And then Hinako gives a look as if to say, "What did you call me? You seriously did not just call me that. Like, I'm the most loyal person ever." And then one of Hinako's friends makes a comment that everyone's just disappeared all of a sudden, even her grandmother who can barely walk. And then the scene cuts to Hinako and her friends who are confronting some kind of monster, who I suspect to be Sakuko. And as the monster makes chase, Hinako ends up separated from her friends after she jumps off a ledge. And this is the point of the trailer where we're finally given a glimpse of the gameplay, and it's of Hinako walking. And I think it looks pretty good actually. It's pretty similar to the walk animation in Silent Hill 2 Remake in my opinion. And then we're given a close-up of one of the monsters. And my god, does it look good. I am super excited about the creature design in this game. Kera really knocked it out of the park with this one. And in the Silent Hill transmission trailer, I thought these enemies would be kind of clunky and clumsy and be really easy for Hinako to sneak by. Boy was I wrong. These things can fly. And we're going to go ahead and just skip this part, and we'll come back to it later. And then Hinako is transported to what looks like the Dark Shrine world, and judging from those pigtails, it looks like Sakuko's the one in that cage. And this next part might be my favorite part in the trailer. I think it really hints at the struggles and the conflicts in the interpersonal relationships between Hinako and her friends, which I think will be a major part of the story. And do you remember that sinister voice in the beginning? Yeah, that one. She's saying, "You traitor," or "uragirimono." And if you look at the Japanese characters, it's akin to stabbing somebody in the back. And you can see in these scarecrow enemies, they have sickles in their backs. So these really creepy monsters might be some kind of manifestation of betrayal based on her former friends. But somebody who can speak Japanese should correct me on this. And yeah, wow, you can imagine walking through this building with all of these scarecrows standing still looking at you, then suddenly attacking you. It is really horrifying. I am super excited about this part of the game. So then we can hear some of the dialogue, which I believe to be Sakuko. Then it flashes to "Usoda," or "That's a lie," or "That's cap." I hate the dark. I hate being alone. We then see Hinako wielding another weapon, which is awesome. It's cool to see a spear-type weapon in Silent Hill finally. I did read a lot of comments that the game will only feature melee weapons since guns are more difficult to come by in Japan than the US, but I mean, who knows. I'd like to see at least one kind of ranged weapon in the game just to spice it up. It doesn't have to be a gun. It can even be like a crossbow or something, or a bow and arrow. And then, finally, we're shown the climax of the trailer, which is some nightmarish monster form of Sakuko. You can still see the pigtails, by the way. And this is super intriguing to me. How do we get from the beginning of the trailer, where Sakuko's demeanor is very amiable towards Hinako, to this turn at the end where Sakuko is now a horrific monster that Hinako must confront? This is the narrative gap that I can't wait to piece together once the game comes out. I really like this tension in these interpersonal relationships and deception, like not knowing who you can trust. Or even if you're the actual traitor who betrays your friends. I think this will make the psychological horror element of the game very strong, and I trust that Ryukishi wrote these characters well to make this a genuinely terrifying story. And I go more in depth about my theory of the story and possible connections between Silent Hill F and the other games in the franchise in a previous video I made, so I'll link that in the description in case you're interested to hear more speculation about the game. Okay, so now to address the elephant in the room, the combat. I want to be clear before I give my critique. I don't think that the combat we saw in the trailer is that big of a deal, okay? It's not exactly to my liking, but if it stays the same in the final release, then so be it. It's really fine. But I just want to point out why it could be beneficial to tweak it before the release. Okay, so what's wrong with it really? On the surface, in my opinion, it just seems a bit out of place. Hinako seems a bit too proficient with the pipe. I half expected a combo icon to pop up as she is attacking the enemy. Kinda like this. I know it's a bit hyperbolic, but the pause impact animation is a bit jarring, and I think it's one of the things that takes me out of it a little bit. But why does it really matter? So I want to bring up 2 points that we need to consider, and both of these points have to do with the gameplay affecting the story. The first point is aesthetic distance. In gaming, aesthetic distance refers to the psychological gap or distance between the player and the fictional game world. So in games, there can be a large distance perspective, like if you're playing a sandbox game or a world-building game like Minecraft. Or in Silent Hill, you have a closed distance perspective, meaning you embody the character or avatar of the game. Staying within one aesthetic distance keeps the viewer or player immersed in the story. But if you switch between the two, this can violate aesthetic distance and break the fourth wall in a very bad way. And to me, the elevator puzzle in Silent Hill 2 kind of breaks the fourth wall in a bad way. It is kind of meta, but it makes the player feel like they're playing a game. And it's not a bad part of the game per se, but it does change the particular tone of the horror, and it's just kind of out of place for me. It goes from a psychological horror to a more campy horror. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Whether that's good is up to you. And maybe to some people, it really was the scariest part of the game because it was so out of place. And the second point I want to talk about is Ludo-Narrative Dissonance. If you've never heard this term before, it's similar to cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort someone feels for having two conflicting beliefs or values. So an example of this would be someone who eats beef but loves cows and believes in animal rights. Ludo-Narrative Dissonance is similar. There's a conflict between how the game is played and how the story is told. One part of the game, whether it's the gameplay or the narrative, is at odds with the other part. So just imagine that you're Zelda in Ocarina of Time. So just imagine that you're Link in Ocarina of Time, and the story tells you that you need to go on this hero's journey in order to beat Ganon and save Zelda in Hyrule. But what if you're able to defeat Ganondorf right then and there? It's kind of like how speedrunners beat Ganon with a Deku Stick and the Infinite Sword glitch. And that's perfectly fine in a speedrun, but just imagine if Ocarina of Time was designed to be played that way. The gameplay would definitely take away from the power of the story. And this is my only concern with Silent Hill F. I really hope that the gameplay reflects how the story is told. And it seems to me that the style of combat might be at odds with the psychological horror aesthetic of the game, but I could easily be wrong about this. I'm not worried about the game's story at all. I think Ryukishi will not disappoint. But I am concerned that the way Hinako navigates throughout the game, mainly through the combat, will distract or take away from the story of the game. But that said, the combat really isn't that big of a deal at the end of the day. I know I'm harping on this a lot, but to me, Silent Hill is a game about having an experience, and this experience is shaped by the story and environment of the game world. The combat is never a primary feature of Silent Hill, but always a secondary function that supports a kind of horror atmosphere or experience. So either way, I'm super excited about the game, and I can't wait to play it. I think it's going to be the breath of fresh air that the Silent Hill franchise really needs, and I'm already in love with the creature design, and I can't wait to experience the story. So that's all I have for now. I don't want to speculate too much in this video, but I am really curious what you think. What are you most excited about in Silent Hill F? What is your favorite part of the trailer? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to hearing what you all think. And as always, thanks for watching.